Good Morning, Adam, Milton, Joker Pot, Ankit and James. Yeah, freezing, isn't it, mate? Cold here in Nottingham. Adam, the book's actually released last night. We did like a, do they call it a soft release, where you don't announce it? So I thought I'd announce it live on here that it's now available. We're limiting it to a certain amount of copies to make sure we can hit the sort of Christmas rush. So you can get the volume 7 now. I had to put the prices up a bit, unfortunately, because the cost of producing the book's actually almost doubled now. So there's a little bit of a price hike, but I've tried to keep it as minimal as possible. Hi, Zero. Yeah, the signed copy is cheap as CH. It's we've only put that up, I think, by £5, and the sketched in level up copy we've had to put up by a £10 rise, unfortunately. Just cost, I guess, like my printer says, the cost of paper's gone up, the cost of everything's gone up, so we've had to sort of offset that a little bit. So apologies to anyone who's a bit disappointed with the cost, but there is also the level up version. We've just done a release of 100 of each pre-Christmas, and then there'll be plenty more after Christmas. We just want to make sure that anyone who's trying to get it as a gift I can get them done in time, basically. Selling old bike frames, Dan. Yeah. I don't know if it's worth selling a good bike frame for, though. How old am I? 51, Zero. Very old man. So I'm a little confused with this piece I'm working on as to just how far I'm gonna get it on this live stream, but I'll just keep hacking away at it and see how we go, really. I'm glad you all think it's not too bad a price on the books. It's always a bit difficult because we want to, obviously it's been a couple of years since I released the last one, so we want to keep producing these things, but don't want to sort of take the mick, as they say in UK, and sort of overprice ourselves. So we are a bit wary of pushing the price up, but it's also quarter bigger than previous books as well. So I managed to do 200 illos, I think, in total. Normally each previous volume has been 148, so there is some extra content in there as well, and there's some pieces I'm quite pleased with, and hopefully it will be of interest to you all. Johan Cass, how do you feel about Frank Quietly? Well, I really like his work. Yeah, I think he was working on 2000 AD when I was trying to get work with them, so it was I remember looking at his work quite a lot. He was doing, I think they had a Western series called Missionary Man, maybe. It was really good that he illustrated. So yeah, I like his work. Morning, Mark. How you doing? Just ordered you. Oh, well done, mate. Thank you. I'll make sure I do a nice sketch for you. Tom Dale, how did you decide which pieces make it into your... It's sort of, you have to be quite brutal. Some of them were scanned, and then I realised they were for maybe sketches that I wasn't really allowed to show because they might have been for projects or commission work, or not really relative to what I wanted to put into the book, or related to what I wanted to put in the book. Then some of it's just down to, some pieces I'd done. For example, we had to ditch a load that were done on grey paper because they just didn't come out nice in the print. Although they're nice, interesting sketches, and I'd have liked them in there, but they're on quite a dark grey paper, so it kind of really threw out the look of the book, so we had to ditch a bunch of those, and then it's just a matter of being a little bit brutally honest with yourself about what's good and what's not. And there were some that weren't good, and for the most part they didn't make it in. There's one or two where I'm maybe not so happy, but other people, I usually get my wife and kids and friends to just sort of look it over and see what they think, just to get a second opinion, because the things that bother me might not bother them as much, or they may see something in the illustration or the sketch which I haven't seen that they do like. So it's always useful to get second opinion, whether that person's an artist or not. I think it doesn't really matter. They've still got a fresh set of eyes and an opinion on stuff. So. Hey Alexandra, hey Skarner, Papa Dart, thoughts on Singer Sargent? Well, there's not much to say about the guy, is there really? He was just a genius, sort of next level. I absolutely love his work. and also really like a lot of his watercolour stuff, which he did, you know, on his trips around Italy and to the Alps and places like that. So there's a real sort of lovely sense of freedom to them. Like, I did read that he got a bit, not sort of, maybe got a little bit disheartened with the sort of constant society portrait thing, and so I think when you see his landscapes, you see a different aspect of his work that's really interesting. Yeah, Dan, his watercolours are crazy, aren't they? So free and so much energy in there. Hey Farouk, how you doing? Nice to see you back on here. So I'm just gone in with a sort of purple, and I'm not sure which blue it is. Maybe like a phthalo blue or something, mixed with a little bit of burnt sienna, just to knock it back a bit, and trying to sort of define or refine some of the drawing that I've lost from putting the paint on, and, you know, get some more sort of volume into the figure. I think that's the plan. But I also considering going back in with pencil afterwards, just because I quite like the lines that I've got going on under there. So, but you can see with this sort of stuff, you have to have a bit of faith in what you're doing. So at the end of the live stream on Wednesday, I was a little bit, not disheartened, because I know that the process and that I have to just stick with it, but I hadn't got the results I'd hoped to get. But one of the benefits of the sort of experience I've got of working and sketching and doing this stuff for so long is that you sort of have to trust in the process. If you don't get there in the first instance, look at what you've got and assess whether it's going in the right direction, and it just needs a bit more time and sort of energy putting into it. And that's how I felt at the end of the live stream on Wednesday, that maybe it was a little bit messy and, you know, not resolved in many ways, but the foundations were there to make maybe an interesting watercolour. So once you come back in with the you know, start to refine things a little bit, then you can see it starts to pull the illustration together a little more. So I don't know, he doesn't have a name at the moment, Kada. Maybe you could name him. Yeah, Adam, that's no problem. Just drop me a message and I'll try and do that for you. For anyone that's just jumped on here on the live stream, I just was saying earlier that the Volume 7 sketchbook is now live. We've done like a soft release, so I haven't announced it. I wanted to sort of let the YouTube guys on here know first, as a little, you know, thanks for following. And so it's live on my website with limited to 100 level up sketches and 100 signed, but there will be more. That's just to ensure people wanting it before Christmas, hopefully I can fulfill all those orders. So don't worry if it does sell out, it will be back in stock shortly after Christmas. Gary is a good name for a Viking, I believe. Are there characters you draw from time to time, or are they just random each? They're not random, there's definitely repeats and things I come back to regularly, and themes, and there's a pirate who pops up every now and then with an anchor tattooed on his head, and so there is characters that do, you know, that I do repeatedly draw, but for the most part they're quite random. Like last night and the night before I've been watching a really good TV series on BBC iPlayer over here in UK that's called The English, sort of based in it's a Western, effectively, with some definite nods to spaghetti westerns, classic, and also to me it feels a little bit like Red Dead. So it's very stylishly done by a mostly English cast, so really enjoyed that. I think I've got one episode to go, so I ended up doing something based on the Pawnee Indian character in that. And then last night I watched most of A Fistful of Dollars with my lad Art, who's obsessed with Red Dead Redemption and wanted to watch Fistful of Dollars because he'd seen reference to it in the game. So we watched most of that, and then after I'd finished I sat and sort of sketched out some Mexican bandit type characters. So, you know, tends to be influenced by what I'm watching or other artists a lot of the time. Yeah, there's a definite nod to the Jungi sketchbook with the cover. I just wanted to do something that was like a little subtle nod to him, really, and everything he sort of represented, and my friend. And so I've done the cover figure sort of has a feel of that Jungi Super Annie logo as well. It's just not a rip-off, just to, you know, just a little homage really to the guy. What kind of watercolour do you use, Freddie? These are just Winsor & Newton pans, so I can hold them up here. Nothing you know, special. I've got a better set downstairs somewhere, but I'm not sure where I've put them, so these are what I'm using at the moment. Adam, remember with volumes 1 and 2 you used to do a more detailed sketch for a slightly higher cost than the standard level up. What made you? Just volume really, Adam. It's with my workload and you know, essentially for the most part these level up sketches I do in the evening, so they start to get really sort of, I was getting really tired and working really late, and I just couldn't really keep it going. And also I think the time it takes, it's hard to offset that as a cost to people as well, so I sort of knocked that on the head a bit. Skarna time, currently studying illustration. I've noticed I'm really bad at figure drawing or drawing models correctly in a short amount of time. I think you know, that thing I keep mentioning in previous live streams, that, you know, learning a little bit of anatomy can only help you with that stuff by understanding what it is you're drawing essentially. So that can be very helpful and help you understand the limits and what you can and can't do with the human body. But I think it's just practice and confidence that just comes, unfortunately, with, well, fortunately I suppose, but there's no shortcut to a lot of this stuff. You just have to put the work in and, you know, practice the stuff that you're not good at over and over until you get good at it. That's the truth of the matter, really. But you will get there with practice. It's just about applying yourself and, you know, not being too harsh on yourself. Look for improvement. Don't always compare for what you're doing to people who have been doing it a lot longer than you. That's fine as a sort of end game, to aim to be as good as, you know, these people like McGee and the rest. But I think also when you're learning, always make sure that you're looking for improvement in your own work, not comparing it to someone who's been doing it, you know, 20 years longer than you, and then getting disheartened. Jameson Miller, oh, thanks for picking up a couple of copies. Yeah, as I've said, it's a bit of a soft release. I'll probably put it on my Insta a bit later today, so hopefully you like it. Vega Tebow, how long do you take for a painting? Really depends on subject matter, how much detail I'm putting in, how many figures there are in there. So medium, whether your art director's got a lot of back and forth with it, or they're happy straight away. Oils, like if I do a magic card, I can probably turn them around in a couple of weeks, week and a half. Other bigger paintings I've spent up to, like, I think the Waterloo ones I ended up spending something like 9 months on them, researching and then actually, making preparatory sketches. And watercolors, I probably, 2 to 3 days maybe, just depends. Farrell, I hope it's okay if I say the Proco Figure Drawing Fundamentals course got a really good reputation. Yes, he's really good, Stan is, and the Proco stuff is really sort of, I think he's really nailed that format, and it's, you know, interesting, and he keeps it fresh, and it's definitely worth checking out the Proco approach. He's also a really nice guy. I've got a couple of videos, I believe, on Kazone Art, so that's Kazone, and that's put together by the guys who do Kim Jung-gi US. So there's also a few Jung-gi instructional videos on there, and a couple of really interesting ones from Hyunjin, who's the sort of CEO, I guess, of Super Annie, the sort of head of Super Annie. Is another fantastic teacher. Comes up almost exclusively from a teaching background, actually, but a phenomenal watercolor artist as well. So he's got a couple of videos on there as well. So if you're looking for, you know, something like that, you can check out Kazone Art. You have to excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm blowing my nose. Bear with me. Dedication. Adam, any advice on someone, beginner, intermediate, can use a book like yours for practice without directly copying? Well, firstly, I don't think there's anything bad with directly copying. I mean, you don't want to do the whole book, that would just be weird, but you can learn a lot doing that, you know, just sort of trying to work out the marks and you know, the proportions and things like that, so that's useful. Also, I think when I do those books, I always wanted to do something which I would like to see, so there's also a bit of a resource for like design and character creation and things like that. So I think the thing I'd hope people might take from it is to sort of come away and want to maybe, you know, design some of their own characters, or, you know, just put a narrative into. I think you can do a lot with people's faces and, you know, the gestures and the way they hold themselves, or they might be standing, or the equipment they're carrying. You can sort of tell a lot about of a story or a journey through that. So I always try to put that in. So I'd hope that, you know, you can pick up something like that from it as well. Would love to see oil on one of these sessions. Yeah, I was got a bit shied away. I shied away from the oils this session, but I will try and do that. I've got my oil painting set up in a second room, so just because it's quite a big, you know, easel and things like that, so I could maybe try to move through to there and do something like that. Any tips on being a kick-ass illustrator and an awesome designer, struggling studying the two? I don't know if I'm a kick-ass. I guess the thing for me is that I sort of recognised quite early on I had a good ability with sort of figures and people. So although I'd love to be better at environments and all these other elements, I've also got to play to my strengths, being it being that I need to make money from this. So there's a bit of pragmatism in there as well, and focusing on the stuff that you're really strong at, especially when you're looking for work, is quite important. And as far as being designing stuff, I think that's just comes with the sort of love of painting figures, really, and in different sort of what would you call it, different formats or historical periods, or just like that whole sort of history and military uniforms, and I think that's informed a lot of what I do, really. Dan, what am I thinking about Gary narrative wise? Well, my initial idea was that he's tracking or hunting someone or something. So I was gonna do I'll put some in here now to show you. So a bit of water. And then I was just going to do a bit of blood in the snow, like there's someone he's tracking, or he's wounded, or hunting well, he doesn't look like a hunter, he looks more like he's after someone. So that was my idea there, really, with Gary. Maybe James, he should have been looking for a Christmas tree, not being quite as violent and Viking-like. I'm going to go in with some sort of more pigment in this to try and get a bit of a hint of that sunlight behind him, because I've gone all in with this blue, overall blue on him, but I need to try and resolve this light in behind him, I think, as well. So this is a slightly thicker mix of orange here, just to try and get a bit more colour intensity on there. Freddie, yes, I think it's thin layers, definitely. Well, that's the approach I've always used. Thin first. There's a limit to how thick you can go with them anyway, I think, so. And try to bear in mind where you want your whites to be, not let them get lost in the frenzy of painting. When I'm going here, look, I'm trying to put another tree or maybe like a birch tree, but making sure I'm leaving little bits of that sort of yellowy white showing around the fur of the wolf pelt. And also, like we'd said earlier, thinking about those watercolours of Sargent, and it's not really the format to try and do what he was doing, which is to be really sort of free and gestural. But if you, because there's no reference here, so it's much harder to be gestural when you're kind of randomly making things up or working without, you know, a reference point. But you can still bear in mind the way he was putting the paint on, and you know, how he applied it and the energy that he put in, and try and get a bit of that into your drawings, I think, or your paintings. If you hold an idea in your mind a little bit, sometimes it can come through sort of without you. It might be almost subconscious, really, but you'll know when you look back at that painting, drawing, whatever it may be, that that's what you were thinking about at that point, you know. So I made a mistake here while I'm talking. I should have left a little white around this sword blade. Sorry. I'll go back in with some white paint and fix that at some point, or on really thick paper you can sometimes wait for it to dry and scratch it away. You still riding much, Marco? Do you usually balance your... Yeah, I'm riding sort of... I usually do maybe 5 rides a week. Nothing really big at the moment, just because it's so cold. But, you know, I've got like a turbo trainer in the garage, so I do a bit on there when it's really icy. Just try to keep it ticking over regularly. Farrell, yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to do that, submit work. I'm not really sure how to make that work on here, but we could do like a review, set up something to do that with at some point. That's my dog snoring, if anyone can hear him. Paul Klee and Daniel Hazan, what painter are you hooked in? Are you into nowadays? I'm hooked on Paul Klee and Rockwell. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, isn't there, out there? It's hard to say I'm hooked on one. That tends to be I'll get a book, or you know, something will remind me of someone's work, and I'll sort of dig something out and start looking at it again. But yeah, there's so many fantastic artists out there. It's hard to say there's just one that I'm really into. Rockwell, this time of year, I tend to look at a lot, just because his Christmas paintings were so great and, you know, inspirational. Yeah, there's too many to mention, really. So you can see as I start to put in this hinting at these sort of trees that it does help to pull the whole idea of the lighting together a little bit, and you know, as I said earlier, where you feel like you might be a bit lost and you're not sure where it's going, if you can trust the process a little bit and stick with your initial plan and idea, you know, you can start to see it through and come to some fruition, hopefully. Foggy planets, master studies of your pencil, its faces have so much more character than... Yeah, faces, I do get a bit sort of obsessed with faces sometimes, probably a little too much. I have to sort of have a word with myself every now and then and just make myself spend a bit more time on the rest of the drawing, if you know what I mean. I tend to get a bit drawn into, you know, the faces and the character and the expression of the guys or girls I'm doing. But thank you, I'm glad that you think they've got character. Yeah, that's a good idea, Farouk. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Maybe we'll make that happen at some point. Freddie Gonzalez, what's the mix of colours for the Viking skin? I think I've just layered up really with sort of like thin washes of purple with some, it's like a, to me, I'm not sure it, because they're not labelled up on my watercolour set, but it looks like a quinacridone red or something like that. It's sort of quite a magenta-y red, and then some blue in there just to temper it a bit and knock it back. And then I've just built it up in layers, really, washes, to sort of add sort of a bit of depth to it, but I don't know if it's quite right at the moment. Dan, Evan Amundsen has a good model for uses Discord and Patreon and Twitch for people to submit work and have a little community. Yeah, he's a great artist, isn't it, Evan? He's very active as well on these channels and stuff. I'm not quite as young and up to date as he is. So here we spoke about the skin tones a little bit earlier, so you can see I put down a wash that's quite blue and purple, and then go back over with basically a sort of magenta-y red, and just to add a bit of that skin tone to it. Get some in the hands here as well, all the extremities. Around the lips as well. Jameson, we know you are such a busy guy, truly grateful that you take the time to interact with fans as much as you do, especially now with these streams. Thanks, Jameson. I'm to be honest, I missed going to a lot of the events that I went to as well, so it was a way for me to sort of get back to being able to have a bit of back and forth with people like yourself about what I'm doing and techniques. So I think I quite enjoy the format and the actual sort of practice of talking about what you're doing as you're doing it. It sort of sometimes it can help clarify to yourself what it is you're trying to achieve. So something I've missed definitely with not being able to travel as much lately, with various COVID and pandemics and shows being cancelled, and hopefully we'll get back to some face-to-face stuff next year. So I'm using a flat brush here just to sort of try and get some of these trees in a bit more loosely. Always useful to sort of choose your brushes carefully, and I think use the, well, maybe not with watercolour for me so much, but with oils definitely always try to use the biggest brush I can to achieve what it is I'm trying to achieve. Try not to work too small straight away, so they can inform your mark. Well, they inform your mark making so much that the choices you make in brush are really important to the overall look of the picture, I think, personally. What about stretch the paper, Freddie, before start? Well, this, as I don't know if you caught the first part of this on Wednesday, but this is a really, really heavyweight paper, so you sort of don't really need to stretch it. And it's bent a little bit, but that's just because of my slightly wonky setup here. But really, it's not going anywhere. It's like 600 GSM or something. It's almost like a cardboard, so I don't really need to stress about it so much. Yeah, that's the look I was looking for, Daniel, is that sort of warm, you know, when you, like I've just walked the dog here in UK, it's really frosty morning and the sun's low, and you get that sort of long shadows cast, and then real contrast in the areas where the sun's hitting, and the other areas are in shadow. You get that lovely sort of blues and oranges, and everything's a bit sort of magical and misty. So that's what I was thinking of when I started this, to try and get some of that feel to it. I think what I probably will do at some point on this is go back in with some sort of like almost body white to just clarify some of these edges around the fox pelt, and you know, the arms and stuff where it's maybe got a little bit lost. And then I think, I don't know if I'll get round to it this time, but I'll go back in with pencil on the main figure just to sort of pull him together a little bit and sort of clarify some of those areas that maybe have got a bit lost. Also, like the, you know, the black wing goes on so nice over the top of this you know, watercolour, you can get some quite nice results. You can see there. Try and keep the same sort of mark making techniques that I'd use if I was just penciling, but you know, over the top of the watercolour. What are you filming with, Alexandra? Yeah, just my phone and a really cheap like phone holder thing. Nothing special. I really should probably think about investing in some better equipment if I'm going to keep this sort of format going. We can add another hint at what's going on here with a bit of Is this work for the new God of War Ragnarok? No. Be cool if it was though, wouldn't it? I'd love to do something with that. Very cool looking game. Is body white basically gouache, Dan? Yeah, I'd use gouache or even you know, in these pan sets you often, of watercolour, you often get a white, so it's like a matter of, like I normally would put a drop of water on there, leave it to sort of dissolve some of the white, and then, you know, I can pick it up and go in with that quite heavy sort of body kind of colour. Or you could even go in with pencil crayon, which I did think about doing on this, especially around these areas of red and orange around here. So again, something that I'd think about doing is, you know, penciling with colours rather than just pencil. So there's no hard and fast rules to any of it. It's just about sort of having a bit of fun and playing with what you're doing and trying to achieve, I guess. If it doesn't quite work out this time, then next time you hope you can, you know, improve or build on that. Fish flops, how did you become such a cool person? I don't think I'm very cool at all. I was the most uncool kid at school, I know that. I was just slightly weird, slightly sort of not many friends, just sat doing my own thing. I don't know, I'm not cool. Just love what I do, really lucky to be doing this. And lucky to have people interested in what I'm doing as well, obviously. always impressed by your dual-wheeled sketches. Yeah, trying to keep that going for the whole of December, Alexandra. I just started to, initially I was just doing them with sort of like symmetry drawing, which was okay, but sort of like bit of a just a party trick really, because I could only draw from one angle, as it were, or, you know, straight on. So the last 2 or 3 on my Insta, I've tried to sort of do 3/4 angles. It's really difficult, but I do enjoy it. I think it's sort of like treating it like a bit of a brain training exercise, really, because once you get over that initial sort of feeling of not, you know, of the awkwardness of your non-dominant hand, if you can sort of get beyond that and start to feel, not, it's never going to feel as sort of natural as working with your, you know, your dominant hand, but you know, if you can start to feel it's a bit more a bit less awkward and sort of I try to focus on having a relaxed grip on the pen and things like that, so that I know that I'm not sort of too sort of stressed and you know, I'm trying to be loose and mimic what's going on with the dominant hand. Once you get past that initial sort of feeling of being slightly disjointed from using your non-dominant hand, I think you can actually achieve a lot better or more results than you'd actually expect. So like I say, I'm sort of treating it like a brain training and also emergency measure if I ever can't draw with my left hand. Hopefully I can draw with my right. There's actually a couple of pages in the volume 7 sketchbook that are done with my non-dominant hand. You have to see if you can spot them if you buy it. Hi art enthusiast. Never mind, I'll make sure I upload it afterwards so you can catch up, don't worry. Hi David. Adam, does the dual wielding increase the time spent on sketches? No, it's actually quicker. Now I'm starting to get a bit of a rhythm for it and sort of an idea of, you know, what I can achieve, and I'm not sort of feeling quite as awkward with it initially. You can sort of work pretty quick. Obviously with 2 hands is better than 1, so. Hi Matthew. Johan, have you ever done storyboards? I've done some storyboard work. I did some stuff I've done with various companies. I think maybe the last one was storyboarding some fashion advertisement campaign with a really great guy I've worked with on several occasions called Alan Abood. So that was probably the last one I worked on. Darmin, are you going to go over with the brush pen? I'm not sure if I'm going brush pen or if I'm going to use pencil, Blackwing. I've got to sort of make that decision. Probably won't actually do it on this. I probably won't fit it in on this stream because I've got to let the paints sort of dry enough to take the pencil or pen properly. Thanks, Dan. Damon McCarty, late to party after a busy morning and A up from a bloody cold knots. Me duck painting is looking fun. It is a bit frosty, isn't it, out there, eh? Is it possible to see the storyboards, Johan? I'm not even sure where I've got them. I'll have to have a look through my awesome filing system, which is, as you can imagine, not that awesome. Not probably even classed as a filing system, but I've probably got something somewhere. I'll have a look. Do you ever throw colour pencil on top too, Matthew? Yeah, I did mention that just a second ago as a potential for some, you know, pencil crayon work around, especially around this lit area, you know, with the reds and the oranges. Excuse my dog. Molly the collie is always on high alert. Jameson Miller, have you ever seen the way Wiley Beckett layers washes and watercolour? No, I haven't. I'll have to check that out. Is that something that I can see on, you know, YouTube or something? I'd like to see that process. Yeah, doggo, art enthusiast. Freddie Gonzalez, best way to practice for foreshortening, I think, is to probably always consider the area that you're foreshortening as it's in its most simple form, if you know what I mean. So, you know, for an arm it would be like a cylinder, and really work on being able to draw those first, and then considering those shapes while you're sketching your figure out is really useful sort of way to approach it. Sort of going in here with like a blue black really mixed with purple, and you know, keeping all those cool hues but trying to give it a bit more sort of depth and form, because he's looking a bit flat around that torso area, so I'm trying to build up those layers of wash and detail. If you sort of go in now and do this, it can, if I'm going back in with pencil or even a brush pen, if I've defined or refined a lot of this stuff, then it can be helpful to stop me overworking it with pencil and or crayon or whatever, you know, media I choose to do so. I'll check that out, Jameson. That sounds cool. yeah, thanks for the tip. Trying to think about sort of getting a hint of some light bouncing back from the snow on his knees and areas like that as well, but not sure if I've achieved that too well. Excuse me. Alexandra, that's funny to see you draw your kids as superheroes with heavy weapons. Are they drawing too, getting older? My daughter's pretty, well, he's actually very good artist. Doesn't practice as much as she needs to, probably, but she's very good. She's got a real feel for it. So she does art at, she's now in what they call college or sixth form here. My son's not quite as into it, although he has, without being sort of proud dad syndrome, he's definitely got the skills to do it. He just unfortunately has video games to distract him from that. Although he's just started going to D&D club at school, so I think that's fired him up a bit with that type of thing. So he spent quite a lot of last night designing maps on his on my iPad using the Procreate app, which he's pretty good with, actually. Hey Herman, what's up? Adam, when you do the cyclist portraiture, do you ever travel to meet, deliver the work to them? Often I live pretty local to Mr. Wiggins. I've had the pleasure of Brad Wiggins coming to my house to pick up paintings on a couple of occasions. Once on the way back from a very famous race called the Ghent 6-day, to pick up a painting of Eddie Merckx. And then I've also met up with Mark Cavendish on a lay-by off the A1 after he'd done I think it was the Tour of Britain, to exchange paintings. So yeah, I do occasionally get to hook up with them, and and they're actually both really nice guys who've stayed in touch with me, and not in spite of, but it's not just a work sort of a relationship. They sort of check in, see how I'm doing, and I check in on them. So it's sort of quite nice that they've become friends, really. Yeah, Procreate's great, isn't it? Art Enthusiast. It's a real sort of real artists. Sort of. I don't mean that by real artists, but I mean it's a very artist friendly program. I don't profess to know much about Photoshop. I'm not a great Photoshop artist. I know enough to draw digitally, but I don't know how to make the most of the package. But Procreate to me felt very instinctive straight away, sort of familiar, not overly complicated interface, and also once you start to, I've used it for projects, and once you start to sort of look into that, you realise there's a lot more to it than first meets the eye, and it's a really good system to use. For example, for me, if I'm working on, let's say, some conceptual stuff for a movie or video games, that back and forth that you often get with those projects, it's really useful to do, and especially colour work and things like that on Procreate. So I can often come up with an initial sketch which the art director might like, but they want colour iterations, then I'll often do those on Procreate. Yeah, Matthew, indeed. I've drawn his character for him, who's a half-orc cleric, apparently. And then yesterday, when they played after school, they had to roll a dice to get, and the winner would get me to draw their character. So I've got another character to draw for them later this week, I think, once I get the information of what he is. Synthesis. I noticed in a lot of your drawings you start with gestural mark making to find the shape of the character. Did you always draw that way, or have you used methods like wireframing, shape them? I've not always drawn that way, no. That's definitely something that's come with sort of over time and sort of confidence, really. So and also trying to sort of come up with a system, or not a system, a sort of technique that suits my probably attributes best. So for me, that as much as I was transfixed and sort of impressed by Jungi's ability to draw without an initial mark making or pencil sketch or reference, I did try, as I'm sure we all did, to do a bit of that, and I sort of realised quite quickly, one, I wasn't as good as him at that, and I was never going to be as good as him at that, because they, having spoke to him, he'd had a much more a different sort of teaching process as well as when he grew up, so there was much more emphasis on being able to draw, learning to draw something by looking at it and then recording it from memory. So it is a sort of way that they were taught in Korea, from what I can understand. But also I find with my work that if I don't do these loose gestural marks at first, to sort of, whether it's be to free up my mind a little bit and sort of, or to clear some of the dead space of the page and just get rid of that initial sort of, blank canvas syndrome. It's just a technique that seems to work for me. It keeps things fresh and energetic when I do it, and it's I think imparting some movement into what I'm doing is really important, especially as you go, take it to another stage where you may be rendering it up like this in paint. You still want, well, I'm still looking to try and retain some of those initial energetic pencil lines and sort of gestural stuff, just because partly that's what I find interesting, and I want to retain that sort of energetic sort of feel. That's something that always drawn me to looking at other artists, and when you go in these galleries and you look at a painting that's maybe 500-600 years old, but you can still feel the movement and you can see the movement. It's there, sort of indelibly marked in the painting, and that's just a moment in time, a flick of the wrist of that artist, or a blob of a certain paint that he's sort of put on in a sort of really interesting or gestural manner, and that's sort of preserved in time. And I do like that idea that you can see and feel some of the energy of the artist through the painting. So I try to keep a bit of that in mind as well when I'm doing these things. I hope that doesn't sound too sort of pretentious. I'm not comparing myself to the likes of Velasquez and Sargent, and but that's there's nothing wrong with taking that influence and trying to put it into your thing. That's how you develop as an artist, I think. Matthew, do I do a lot of life drawing? Not as much as I'd like to, no. In fact, none at the moment, which is terrible. I did do a lot for a long time and was really sort of really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it, but life has got in the way a little bit. Adam, what's the plan with this painting when finished? For commission, up for sale? No plan really. I could put it up to sale. I don't know. I'm thinking of putting some originals on my website this month and seeing if anyone wants to pick stuff up for Christmas, or I don't know. I've got so many sketches and drawings and paintings hanging around that I think it's time to start to get rid of a few, stop hoarding like a weird old guy. Yeah, okay, I'll do that, Jameson. I'll try and get on that this weekend and put some stuff up. try and keep them in a sort of a good sort of wide ranging price bracket as well. I won't sort of just put big expensive paintings on. I'll try and when I've done it before, I try to put, you know, pencil sketches on for like, you know, ranging from sort of, depending on the detail, like 150, 250, so that they, you know, the price sort of reflects the amount of time I've put into it, and hopefully, you know, makes it something that people can afford. So what would you all like to see next? Would you like to see me finish this up with pencils, or do something different on Wednesday? Could talk about what we'd like to do for the next stream, maybe. So I'm probably going to finish this up relatively soon. Been streaming for an hour and a half now, and as I say, I can't really go in with the pencil because the paper's still quite wet. It's not going to take the lines too well, so I could either finish it up in my own time and post pictures on my Insta, and you can see the finished product there, or I could go in, do the pencil lines as a live stream, or we could do something different completely with the live stream and do some oils, or any ideas. Wu-Tang art, yeah. Can you do a tutorial process for do the background in oil? Potentially, yeah. I'm not sure how interesting that would be as just to do the background in oils, but I could do something like that. Hi Jason, thanks mate. Adam, yeah, I've used alcohol markers, not recently, but not really my sort of medium really. I like them, but they're not, I wouldn't probably stream using them, just because I'm not, one, I don't have a huge amount of them. Two, I think personally I'd rather do watercolor than alcohol markers to get those sorts of results, you know. Pencil and oil blocking could be cool, yeah. Feel so, don't be silly art enthusiasts. They're all interesting questions, honestly. Just appreciate you people sort of tuning in and checking it out, really. You know, hint at some tattoos here, maybe. Jameson, oil portraiture. Yeah, I did it also for a while when I was doing some shows at THU and Luca Comics, places like that. I'd do like a live paint sort of no reference oil portraiture type thing. That might be quite interesting. I haven't done one for a while, so I might be really bad at it. But they're quite quick, you know. I can usually sort of finish something like that up in an hour or two, really. So that could be quite an interesting format. Potato printing, yeah, that's the one. Let's do that. I haven't used the gouache yet, Dimanche Dave, over the watercolour, but I may go in with some whites just to sort of refine and clarify some areas that once I've sort of got to that point with it. Yeah, I stick hats on things a lot, Jason, just because I can't be bothered to do the hair. It's standard, I think. So Adam thinks finish in the next stream with pencil or maybe some pencil crayon. I think that's probably the way to go then. Dimanche Day, where are you going to put the white? I'll probably go around sort of this area where I've lost a bit of that I wanted to keep in, to sort of hint at the sort of the backlight on him. Who is the Viking looking for? I don't know. Father Christmas, maybe. Who knows? So yeah, I'll probably leave it there, to be honest. Let this dry. I'm starting to be aware that I'm fiddling a bit too much with it. So one thing always to beware of is too much fiddling. If you think you're sort of just going over the same areas, it might be time to sort of pause and come back and have a look at it at another time. So I'll do my usual and give you a bit of a tour of how he's looking there. So I've got some areas around that skull, bird skull on his helmet to sort of refine, and you know, you can also with this thick paper go in and pull away some of the blue, you know, with water and tissue to sort of try and get a bit more highlight in there. Quite happy with how the wolf pelts come out. I've kept quite a nice sort of set of values on there. Then got to refine a bit of the hand and redraw some of that. I'm trying to keep that bounced light off the snow present, which is sort of working but a little bit lost around this knee, so another area I could look at maybe. quite happy with how the background's pulling together and sort of helps to make it all seem, you know, a bit believable and sort of have him in his environment. Yeah, cost of living crisis, more clothes, less central heating. So there you go. Hope you like it. This is, Adam, similar to the process I did on the big Kapinski, but this probably was a lot less watercolour involved in that. It was much more a line drawing, fairly quick wash of watercolour and then back over with black pen to sort of pull it together really. Well, this one's definitely a bit more painterly than those. So. But yeah, hope you like. And I'll probably look at finishing it up on Wednesday then, and make sure you join me. Make sure you share and like all the videos, and also, as I said earlier, check out the website. There's the volume 7 was released last night, and you guys were the first to know about it because I haven't announced it on my Insta or website yet. So if you're looking to pick up a volume of volume 7, they're live now on my website. So thanks for tuning in, and see you on Wednesday. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care.